Welcome to the Desperately Seeking Self podcast, the show that helps you up your confidence game so you stop settling for less than you deserve. I'm your host, Brooke Collins, speaker, life coach, women's empowerment enthusiast, and the best friend you never knew you needed. Are you ready? Let's get started. Stephanie Erickson, welcome to the podcast. I'm glad you could make it to Desperately Seeking Self today.
It's my pleasure. And I love the title, and it totally brings me back to the 80s of Madonna, huh?
That was my goal. That was
Yeah,
my
I
plan.
love it.
Even when I was like going over the cover, I had people help production team helping me, and they kept giving me covers, and I'm like, no, I want it like graffiti, like like 80s. And so that's funny. That's
Totally,
exactly what I was going for. So thank
totally.
you. So you are a myriad of things, but you're like so incredible to me because you are an author, you are a keynote speaker, you're a television host, right? Is it host or you just do a lot of guest spots and informative pieces?
Yeah, I do commentary. I hope to host one day. That is my goal. And I do host my own. Whoops, sorry, I was turning my phone because it was distracting me.
Oh, it's all right.
I do host my own interviews like this. But I've never had the chance on live TV yet to host. I did host a pilot once, but then it never got picked up.
Well, you're on your way to hosting. It won't be long. If not sometime soon, it'll happen for sure.
That's what we're hoping.
So you have like a plan for aging well. The certified Alzheimer's, you can treat and help families cope with Alzheimer's.
Yeah, exactly. I'm a certified Alzheimer's disease and treatment specialist, and I'm a clinical social worker as well. And right now, my direct clinical practice, me working with families for the last 16 years, has been directly with people who are diagnosed with dementia and their family members.
Wow. That's close to my grandmother had early onset Alzheimer's. So I never, who I knew was not, I mean, by the time I was 6, she had no recollection of me. She knew my sister because she was diagnosed after my sister was born. So like me and the rest of the cousins, like it was always like this reintroductory process when we were old enough to understand what was happening. So
Yeah.
it is something that's near to me. I always donate. I always try and help anything Alzheimer's related research. So I applaud you for working with families because it's not an easy disease to go through as a family member.
No, it's not. And it's draining for me as the professional, and I'm
Yeah.
not even the one in it. So I can only imagine directly what it's like for the family member. And it's even exhausting for me. It takes a toll on me as well, seeing this disease and what it does to people in all different situations, all different economic brackets, races, religions, you name it. It destroys everybody everywhere. Like it's not discriminatory, that's for sure. And I've
Yeah.
seen so many things in my time as a clinical social worker, and it's very hard. It is very hard.
Yeah. It has to be. I can't even get into. I could talk for hours probably about how you like get yourself energetically like
Mm.
recentered after that. But I'm going to move into your confidence in your security because you do keynote speaking. I mean, you are from all aspects this accomplished, polished woman, right? And you at one point struggled with anxiety and fear and I'll say like some types of vulnerabilities with depression and those types of things. So how did you handle things when that started coming up for you? Or why don't you just share your story with me and then I can dig a little deeper.
Okay, so first I'll comment on one thing you say is, this polished, credible, professional. And yes, I am those things. I do believe I am those things. I have the skills, I have the education and all of that. And I'm that. And I'm also riddled with anxiety still all the time. Like it's not independent of one or the other. You can be all those things. And
Yeah.
that's what my message is I'm trying to share with people is you can have, sometimes debilitating anxiety or just even a moderate level or depression or whatever it might be, but that doesn't limit you necessarily from still achieving other things in your life. My story, it started way back when. I think I was born with anxiety because even before I was abused, I was sexually abused as a child, and I was only 5 when it happened. But even before that time, when I was around 2.5, I had pulled all of the hair out of the side of my head. That's called trichotillomania, and it's actually an impulse control disorder. But I personally believe it was part of my anxiety.
Mhm.
So I think I was born with it, and then I was sexually abused, and then my dad left, then I was sexually abused, and then it was just kind of this snowball of events over time, that have contributed to my difficulties in managing my anxiety, which I didn't even know that's what it was, to be honest with you, until I was in my 20s. Then I actually said, "Oh, this is what it's called. Oh, this is what it is." But by that time, you've already struggled. You've already developed a lot of maladaptive coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
And so it's been a long time, and we can get into at some point what for me like the tipping point was in terms of really improving my functioning.
Yeah, I like that you say you were born with anxiety because I think I didn't even recognize that I had anxiety until my 30s.
Exactly.
Like I would have told you that I didn't struggle with it. I didn't have it. I I believe part of I'm a recovering alcoholic, and I believe part of my addiction was I would get so anxious and I wasn't realizing it. So I was pre-drinking like just to calm myself down. And then when you get sober, it's like there's no more numbing agents. So then it was like I was forced to face the anxiety, which actually was really debilitating for me, because I didn't realize how horrible it can be in physically, just like the fear and the it's like a wall, like coming up against a wall is the only way I can describe it for myself. Like it was just this palpitating fear, um, that once I recognized I had it, it's like it exacerbated it even more. Like then I'm like, oh my God, I'm having anxiety right now. And I was like in this perpetual cycle of dealing with it. So I think that anxiety is not given enough credit in the street cred with people because it's like people think you can just get over it. I mean, that's like my parents would say, get over it, get over
Mhm.
yourself, just get out and go. And I'm like, you don't understand. Like, this is more than me just getting over it. Like, I don't know what's causing it. I don't know what triggers it. And I'm like stuck.
Yeah, 100%, Brooke. And by the way, the reason why I didn't know until I was in my 20s is because I was getting high every day. Same type of thing. I smoked a hell of a lot of pot, and now I know why. And at the time I was doing it, and I started in college, so I was like, "Oh yeah, it's a college thing." But of course, now in hindsight, I can see how it grew into what it was. However, even though I'm getting high every single day, waking and baking, I managed to get my master's degree with a 3.9 average. You know what I mean? And that's what I'm saying is you can be functioning really well, but still not be functioning.
Right.
And so it wasn't until I stopped smoking pot and really started understanding that this is what was happening to me. And to go back to what I said the first time, because it is still in me, the difference now is that I completely understand my triggers. I can anticipate what my triggers will be and already put coping mechanisms on hold in place, knowing what could happen. I can verbalize quite well when it is happening. I can identify physically in my body where it's sitting and why my body is reacting the way it is. And then I've like basically coached my team, being my friends and family around me, of what my anxiety looks like, what happens to me, and what I need. And so by doing all those things, I have elevated my functioning into a whole other level because of the insight. It doesn't mean that my knee jerk reaction isn't still to go to that place where your mind is spinning out of control, because it goes there still just as fast, just as deeply.
Yeah.
It's just the way I respond to it is a lot different now. And that's what's helped me do so much better. Plus the flying trapeze, which I know we're going to get into
Oh
later.
yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
That was so um when you are talking about, because I like that you're focusing on the being able to be high functioning and like the duality of it that comes with it. Like you can be a mess and still be functioning on the outside from all the levels, right? The markers in life. Um, how is it that you start to realize what your triggers were for you? Was it like going to therapy maybe and dealing with the trauma from being abused as a child? Or where is it that you start to recognize like, oh, this is causing like with the domino effect?
Yeah, it's a good question. I did do therapy several times in my life, but often in the beginning of my therapy career, I was also high. So I can't really count that because it wasn't real deep insight.
Right.
But once I stopped smoking pot, the therapeutic experience was very, very different. And it took one particular therapist. Her name is Leanne. This is when I was living in California, also a social worker. And she had me buy a particular book on sexual abuse. And we went through it chapter by chapter. And it just gets me emotional thinking about it. It's so freaking painful to look back at that experience and the relationships and my mom's part in it. I was abused by a boyfriend of my mom's, just so that we're all clear. But and the role of my dad deserting us. And I mean, it was just, it's so complicated, the whole thing, because it wasn't just the abuse, it's all of the other things around that too.
Yeah.
So really like like digging into that and going through the pain. In order for me to do that, what I did was I went on medication because I wouldn't have been able to function. So I went on medication with the agreement, like the therapist and I are like, okay, we'll do medication and we're going to do this work so that you don't spiral out of control and end up wanting to kill yourself.
Hmm.
Um, so I took that period of time and really dug in. But later in life, I had, this is kind of what led to the flying trapeze, was after my father died, and even before that, when my kids were really young, I was having other issues come up because I hadn't had kids, right? And then now I
Right.
have kids and I'm starting to have all different symptoms of anxiety that I'd never had before. And so then I went back to therapy to try and understand, why is this bothering me? And other things came up, other discoveries as to why this current situation was triggered by something in the past. And so then getting insight into that really helped me. And so I think formal therapy can be extremely useful. It's nothing that I've personally done in, oh God, it's been probably 10 years.
Okay.
And I'm not sure, truthfully, if I'll ever go back. I guess because at this point, I'm very clear of what I need to do. I'm not against it. But I think you have to, for advice for anybody, for me anyway, and I'm no expert on this, this is just what worked for me, was biting the bullet and saying, I need to do this freaking work. I need to figure
Yeah.
this out because I will not be able to function and enjoy life unless I really understand where my triggers are coming from. So when they can come up, I can remind myself, this isn't like the time when your mom didn't do this and this and this for you. This is a time when you do have control. This is a time when you can manage, and then change those crazy thought patterns and then be able to function better.
Yeah, because when you go and you talk about doing the work and like going through the book, like with a professional therapist. First of all, I think it's really brave. I'm going to commend you, and any other survivor of any type of abuse and stuff in their childhood, I think would agree that like you deciding like I'm going to take this head on, I'm going to deal with it is different. Lots of people will just numb it. They don't want to touch on it. They don't want to get better and live a high quality life. So first of all, that's super commendable and so brave.
Thanks, Brooke.
Um, and then you have to deal with, I think, finding all I can hear in that, even when you got emotional, is just like finding the safety. Like, where am I safe? You know, you're here, your dad is gone and abandons you, and then you've got your mom and the anger and the resentment and the, you're living in a place of fear. I think for a very long time after something like that happens to anyone as a child. So I think getting to safety is key. And I'm glad that you obviously had that therapist to guide you through that and have you on medication to get you through where you needed to get through to be able to push through and create a balanced life for yourself. Do you think that when you had kids that the hormone change, or like there was just more fear because you had like the fear was brought back? Because I know for me personally, my postpartum anxiety was all fear based of what could I was gonna something was gonna happen to my daughter. So can you just touch on that a little? Because I think it's interesting that it came back during, after you became a mom.
Yeah, I'm sure hormones had a piece to it. I mean, hormones affect how we function all the time. Even now, I mean, my kids are 12 and 15, and at the time when I ovulate, tend to be more anxious. Like
Yeah.
it's just, it does. My hormones do trigger that anxiety, but for me, it was more about the fear that I would be my mother. Can I
Okay.
swear on this channel?
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
podcast, right? Because I was going to say, and fuck up like she did.
Yeah.
And my mother and I, by the way, have a nice relationship now. I've gone through the forgiveness process and we're okay now. But I was so afraid that I was going to be my mom and miss the stuff that my kids were going through. So when they would be ill, like I was constantly worried about them getting sick. And when I went back to therapy, because I started getting really germophobic and like freaking out, oh my God,
Oh
they're going to
yeah.
get sick and don't touch this. And I was like over the top. And what I realized is it was because I was afraid that if they were in a time of need, I wouldn't do the right thing. And that went back to my mom and her neglect of me for the abuse. And also, it brought me back to a moment when I remember when I was I was probably 10 or 11, maybe I was a bit older, maybe 12, 13, and I was sick. I had like the flu gastro
Uh-huh.
and I was throwing up. And I had asked her if she would come help me and be with me in the bathroom. I was afraid. And she said no. And a lot of it went back to that, where again, I needed her. And she
Mm,
said no. Now whatever. Now I understand she has a fear of throwing up. And so that would have triggered her. I get it now. But at the time, it's like my mom wasn't here for me. So it
right.
was all of that when I had kids started rising up is I'm going to turn into her. And so it's taken a lot of work and it still does. This morning, my daughter and I, she's 15, we had this whole thing and she was furious with me this morning. And when she left, I was sobbing. I'm like, oh my God, I've ruined our relationship. I'm a horrible mother. And again, it's taking me back. And I have
Yeah.
to remind myself, no, I'm not my mom. I didn't just sell her out for sexual abuse. I just made her late for school because she had to learn a lesson. Like it's not
Right.
comparable, but my reaction is if it's in that moment. And that's the constant work that all of us as humans, whether we have anxiety or not, it's good for us to do that constant reflection and work so that we are clear of what our own issues are, not projecting them onto other people, and not letting our past dictate how we experience the present.
Yeah. I always with anxiety too look at I think it's Buddha maybe where if you're living in the future, you're in anxiety, and if you're living in the
Totally.
past, you're in grief. So you're neither looking in either direction isn't good. Just kind of staying in today
So hard.
helps. I think it's funny when you're I wasn't laughing at you because that's how I am with my 15-year-old. When she gets upset, I'm like, oh God, our relationship's done. It's over. Like, how am I gonna repair this? And
That's what I said to my husband. We were already on thin ice. He's like, she's a teenager. Of course, she's hating you right now. Plus, it's a pandemic and she's stuck inside the house. It's like the biggest
yeah,
nightmare for a teen. So, anyways, then I went into the gym again. Put your things in place. I know that I need to exercise. It helps me manage. So I'm a mess. I was sitting on the gym floor crying. Okay. And then I was
yeah,
like, okay, Stephanie, don't live in this space. Get yourself out of it. Get on the machine. So I got on the machine. By the time I was done, I had stopped crying.
yeah,
And now I feel better. Like, okay, we're going to resolve it tonight. We'll have a discussion. It's not the end of the world. And I know like we have to put our coping mechanisms into place. One of mine is exercise. Like I have
yeah.
to do it. Right. So
Yeah, I agree
yeah.
wholeheartedly. I think it's the most underused form of therapy for
Yes.
anybody is exercise. If I walk my dog like 2 miles every day, no
Good for
matter
you.
what. I mean, it's good for my dog, but it's also my brain chemistry needs that on top of like other stuff that I've been, strengthened. Like our gyms are closed in the States. So in Michigan in
Ours
particular.
too. My gym's in my house.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm
Yeah.
like, oh God, like can't get on, do any of the stuff. So I thank God for the Peloton app. I got to give them a plug because their workouts are incredible on the app that they have. So those kind of get me through and push me through. So I love that you brought that up, that that it's a tool that you have to do to get yourself out of the space that you're in.
Yeah.
And, um, I think just knowing to trust your body and moving into like, okay, my body's feeling this way. It feels frozen or it feels stiff. Like I need to go move and create some fluidity within my system is helpful. So let's touch on the trapeze. Let's get into the trapeze because I love this. This is like when you messaged me and we were chatting, I'm like, this is so incredible because it's something so like you wouldn't think that that would be this healing, although I get it, the fear, like overcoming that and getting out of your comfort zone. Because I just look at the trapeze, like I just was watching, what was I watching with my daughter? Oh, Little House on the Prairie. And there were like these circus people that came and they're doing the trapeze. And I'm like, this is like the high up in the, So tell me how you, first of all, how did you find this to even do it?
Yeah. This was after my dad died. I sank. What we had repaired our relationship as well, my
Okay,
father
good.
and I, and it was an amazing relationship. The last 10 years of his life, he became one of my best friends. It was amazing. And he died suddenly. And I sank. I was became pretty much agoraphobic. I didn't want to go out. It was bad. My anxiety was really, really bad. I won't get into all the gory details, but it was not good. And one evening we did have some friends over and we were drinking some wine. I don't have any issues with alcohol, so it was just
Yeah.
the weed. So anyways, I can drink or not drink.
Yeah.
It's not a problem for me. So anyways, we were drinking some wine, a little bit buzzed, and I was saying to her, "Oh, I got to do something. I got to get out of this house." And she's like, "Well, what did you do before in your life that you thought was kind of fun and you'd like to do again?" I'm like, "Oh my God, 20 years ago I was at Club Med and tried the flying trapeze." And she's like, "Well, let's see if there's a place." So she Googles on her phone. There's a place near us. She makes a reservation. We immediately get a confirmation. We're like, holy fuck, what did we just do? Right.
Yeah.
So then we went, and I have to tell you, I cried the entire time I did it because I'm also scared of heights, and the platform is 18 feet up. I cried the entire time I did it, but driving home, I felt like a goddess. I was like, I am the most incredible person in the world. I feel amazing. So I'm like, I'm going to go back. My friend was like, I've had enough. I'm not going back. I'm like, well, I'm going to go back. 6 months, Brooke, cried driving there, cried during the session, and then came home, arms practically like this in the air. I'm a champion. And it was that after feeling of just like, I did it again. I did it again. I felt debilitated, scared, paralyzed, but I can continue and then feel really good. It didn't connect with me what it was for my anxiety quite yet. But over the time now that I've been flying, it's become very clear to me how that experience is representing where I am in my life, and all the lessons that I learn doing that very scary yet thrilling yet joyful experience has helped me use all of those skills and plant them into my everyday life and find healing and evolving in a way that an evolution in a way that I never had anticipated.
Yeah. I can't imagine the fear going up the steps to the 18 feet, because the older I get, the more heights didn't used to bug me. And now I've noticed, like I'll be like, whoa, like my husband and I went on a hike in Arizona right before, before the lockdown. And I was like, whoa, like when we got up, I'm like, I didn't feel like I can't look down now. So climbing up, knowing that you're gonna like, even if someone's with you, because I'm assuming at first you're like attached to
You're
some,
hooked in, you hook in at the bottom of the ladder and there's a cord, so the hook goes up with you. But if you were to fall, there's an automatic stop.
okay.
So the worst that could happen is you're hanging, but you're not dropping to the ground and you're hanging literally on top of the ladder. And yes, in the beginning you're hooked. I mean, I'm at an advanced level now where I'm definitely not hooked climbing up the ladder. That's been for years, but even in the tricks, I often am not hooked as
Yeah,
well. Like I've progressed to an advanced level. Yeah.
which is awesome.
Yeah.
But that's got to be so, like the debilitating part of like, I just can't see, like for me, I can see the therapeutic aspect of it, because it's like, I'm going to do this. I'm pushing, like, it's really just pushing through and getting to the other side of it. Right. And that's a lot like an anxiety attack. Like, for me, what you just described sounds like when I'm in anxiety and I have to recognize, like, okay, this is just my anxiety. I'm going to get through this. I'm going to breathe through it. And when I'm done with this, out of this space, like I feel free. And I know that I was in my head and it wasn't real, the anxiety, the stuff that
Yeah.
was going through my mind.
Well, no,
So
well, being in your and your head and having your thoughts not be real, that's probably the biggest lesson for me. Yes, I've implemented mindfulness. So when I feel, I have this thing called disassociation, and that comes from when I was a child being abused, where as the guy was sexually abusing me, I would disassociate from my body, and I felt like I was floating above my body, actually watching the abuse happen as an outsider. It's a coping mechanism. It's associated with PTSD and stuff. A lot of people have it who have trauma. That still happens to me. So sometimes I feel myself disassociating and I'm like, okay, what's the trigger? What just happened? Why am I anxious? So that happens frequently actually when I'm flying. And the nice thing about me knowing that now is I can say, oh, okay, I'm disassociating. So I'm feeling nervous. Well, let me feel what it's like to hold on to the crane bar, and I feel my feet on the platform, and I feel my breathing. Oh, and I can see my friend standing there. So it's taught me to be present mindfully, a mindfulness technique I get to use. But more than that, it's the what is created in my head is completely not real. So when I'm telling myself, I can't do this trick unattached, I'm going to get hurt,
Mhm.
something's going to go wrong, I have everything in the world to fear. And what my coach, oh, I get so emotional when I think of him, Patrick, he's always said to me is, he's the one that started this particular mantra. He said, your body knows what to do, Steph. Get out of your head. Yes, visualize a trick when you're on the board, and then just leave your head.
Yeah.
Your body will know what to do. And that lesson has been tested time and time again on that platform, because before I take off, I'm like, holy fuck, what am I doing? I'm going to kill myself. And then I say, no, take a breath. Your body knows what to do. And sure enough, when I'm not in my head, my body absolutely knows
Knows
how to
what.
respond. And so I can translate that when my kids are sick, my body absolutely knows what to do. I will be able to care for them. When I'm afraid to leave the house, I don't need to be. My body knows what to do to protect myself, to keep myself safe. So that's where that mind game gets tested time and time again on that platform. And I've kind of needed those repeated exposures to keep reminding myself so that I can continue to elevate my functioning, which I am. And since then I've brought in a lot of other little mantras before, more than just your body knows what to do. I have some other ones.
So, do you think that the mantras, do you use them in places other than the trapeze then?
All the time, all the time. And just before I get to some of the other ones I have, for example, the your body knows what to do. When I was saying in the very beginning that I've had to like coach my team around me, meaning my family and friends, as to what I need, the women, and it's mostly women that I fly with, my closest friends that I fly with, they know my mantras. So my friend Lynn always will say to me before I take off, even if I'm not anxious, she says, your body knows what to do. You know, it's like you can give people the tools, and then they help you. You know, people don't mind helping you when you are very clear of what you need. So yes, your body knows what to do. I think about a lot, particularly around illness. If I'm ill, if I get a cold and I start, especially now, oh my God,
Yeah.
I've got coronavirus. Oh my God, because I had a cough. Oh my God, I have COVID. And then I'm like, even if you have COVID, your body knows what to do. You will be healed. You don't need to worry about it. You know, you'll know how to respond. I also use believe, trust, let go. I also use I am safe, I am loved, I am light. So all of these things I will repeatedly say to myself when I start feeling myself getting worked up.
I love that. I want to touch on, you just said something really important that I think is worth repeating, because when you tell people how to help you and you let them in on what you need, and it was, when they're very clear how to help you, they help you. And that in and of itself is so powerful. As women, we want to do it all and not like asking for help, asking for that I need support. Why would I admit that I need support? Um, is one of the hardest things to do for most women. I think we want to be it all, be everything to everyone except for ourselves. So allowing people to be there for you and say, when you're at the platform and Lynn saying, your body knows what to do. Like that's a huge thing. It's not just, someone like cheering you on. Like that's a huge thing to have a support system like that in place. And I'm sure that your husband has ones at home when he can see you kind of your physical tensing up. Like, I just think that's like really incredible that you even are able to reach out to your team and say, like, here's what I need when X happens, I need Y, or when Z happens, I need A. However communicate with them. But that is had to be, I mean, it's probably easier with the trapeze friends because you guys are all supporting each other, pushing each other to be better, because it's athletic. I mean, it's
Oh,
like
yeah,
at
yeah,
the
yeah.
top of the like elite athlete doing that. I mean, you have to be physically in shape. I mean,
Oh, it's no joke. It's a sport. We're athletes there. It's no joke what we're doing when we're up there. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, the strength, just even me thinking about it is like, whoa, I
Yeah.
need to be working out for like 3 years to get the upper strength to do
Um,
that.
like, yeah, I mean, it could be easier, I guess, with the trapeze people in that environment, but it was also about, and this is another lesson that being there has taught me, is that I can also identify who I can trust, who is worthy of my vulnerability and who is not. And I don't mean to say that negatively against somebody else, but when you're abused as a child, you start wondering if you're a good judge because you don't know who to trust or not trust. This was a man who was living in our home for 8 months that I thought was replacing my dad, and he was so amazing and lovely to me, but then at night he was abusing me. So it was very confusing as a child, and that becomes your identification of relationships. So my whole life I'm trying to figure out, is this person really good or not? And so being opening myself up and learning to trust myself of who those people are, who I can trust and who will be there for me, like Lynn, um, has been a big growth and a big blessing for me in my own life, because now I can have intimate relationships with a lot of people who really are good people. And I really am worthy of their love, and they're worthy of mine. And I can trust them, and they can trust me. And you can see that, yes, on the platform. It's like a visual image of what's happening in my life, because it's a whole dance you have to do on the platform where you give someone a bar, you have to remove the bar that we stand on to make you take off higher, and you have to move around, and when someone comes back to the board you have to lean and scoop them. I mean, it's all this dancing that's going on, and when you're catching and you literally let go, you're in the air going, catch me, and you're not attached. Like, you really need to put your trust in other people, and
Yeah.
they need to trust you back. So it's been it's been really beautiful, and I trust them so much that you know and I also ask their permission too. Like, there are some days when my anxiety is really high and I'm crying at home, and we have a time to train that day, and I'm like, I don't know if I can make it. Like, I'm a mess today, and I'll call them or text them and say, hey, look guys, it's not a good day for me, I'm crying a lot. And they say, come cry on the board, it's all right.
Yeah.
And I go and I cry for the first half an hour of class, and they just go on as if I'm not crying. Or Annie is really good. She'll look at me and she goes, and she likes help me breathe. Or she gives me the
Yeah.
bar. She goes, wait, before I give you the bar, take a breath. And I take like, it's incredible. It's
Yeah.
really incredible when you open yourself up and say, this is who I am. People will say, and we love you for that. It's incredible. It makes me emotional, but it's incredible.
No, you're making me tear up over here because it is something that is such a hard concept to wrap your brain around when you've struggled with trusting your intuition and trusting your gut and who the right people are. Like, this is who I am and you love me anyways is such a powerful, I mean, a feeling. It just, and even allowing yourself to receive that by being who you are, like showing up and allowing yourself to be yourself, but then actually receiving the love that's being given to you is a beautiful experience on the bar or in your house or at the bar, at the mall, or wherever you find, you know, your people. But you're like, once you find your people, it makes life so much better, because you know that you are worthy of all the love that you have wanted or needed your whole life that you never got before.
Yeah, and that I can trust my intuition, my gut, that it will not deceive me. Um, it does know right from wrong. It does know good from bad, and to not second guess myself anymore with those feelings. And my sister, who also was abused by the same guy, is still struggling with that concept. And we talk about it a lot, about being able to trust who we are and knowing that we're doing the right thing, and always constantly like waiting for other people to validate or confirm what it is we feel. Like I needed my daughter this morning to tell me, no, you're a good mommy, it's okay. And then after my gym and working out, I walked out of there going, I don't need her to fucking tell me I'm a good mother, I'm a good mother. Yeah,
Yep.
she's mad at me, of course, but that doesn't make me a bad mother. And I shouldn't put that on her, to expect her to feed that. That's my problem, not hers. And
Yeah.
I can tell her that later when she gets home tonight, is I'm sorry for dumping that on her, is crying in front of her, making her feel like she has to take care of me because she shouldn't feel that way. And that's a discussion that she and I can have, which will only help her in her emotional development. So,
Yeah.
I mean, for me, I find that the more vulnerable and honest I'm becoming with people around me, the better I feel, and the better other people seem to feel too. We live in such a fake, inauthentic, lame social media world that it's like, who are people anymore? And I can't be in that space anymore. I can't live that way anymore.
Yeah. I'm right there with you. And I always feel, for my kids in particular, like I'm like, you guys, like my 15-year-old, obviously my 5-year-old is still, we're still not in the social media realm. But you know, I've had to talk my daughter off the ledge a couple times. Like, this, you realize that like the internet is like not real, right? Like what people are posting, these, you know, socialites, or what do they call them, influencers, like
Yeah.
that is not reality. They're being paid. That's their job, to put on makeup and to take cool pictures, you know, when it was Instagram, and now whatever they do with the TikToks, and you know, like, I just, it's not real. And you need to recognize that you are a real person and you're beautiful the way you are. And you're not using filters and lights and, you know, shadows and things to make yourself appear a certain way. And I feel like it's just so hard to find somebody who's authentic. So when I find them, whether it's virtually doing this in a space like this, or, you know, in a Facebook community, or at my yoga class or meditation or wherever, it's like I cling to the people I meet that are willing to say, I don't care what you think of me. I'm who I am. And you can love me and accept me or not, because we are so conditioned to be fake and placate other people. Why? Why do I need to like alter myself to make you feel comfortable? You know?
And just as, why should other people alter themselves to meet your need? And that's
Right.
where the gaining that insight and learning who we are, and then how to communicate who we are effectively, and then being willing to let go of what the results are in terms of other people's responses, is so healing, and it's so good. I was so proud of my son 2 days ago. He's 12. All these texts started going around, and he's like, my classmates are telling me I'm racist. I'm like, excuse me. It's it's hysterical only because he's the complete opposite of racist. In fact, my husband and I laugh because he plays football, and I would say probably 90% of his football teammates are Black.
Mhm.
And those were all his friends. His best friend is Black. And he says to us all the time, I wish I was Black. I love their community. They're so fun. They have so much, he said, white people don't group like that. They don't have as much fun. Everyone's so cold and in that. So he's the opposite of. So then all these people are accusing him because he was talking to some kid who made a racist comment. And they're like, well, if you're talking to him, that means you're racist by association. And he was trying to explain to them, no, I'm was telling him, I was educating him that what he was saying is racist. And I was actually
Right.
trying to help him, which I appreciated my son standing up and trying to say something.
Yeah.
But the classmates kept going. But this, the point I'm making is that like a few hours later, I asked him, so like, what's going on now? He goes, you know what? I'm letting it go. I know who I am. I was like, "Ah, you're 12. Can I get some of that?"
Yeah.
Like,
Can you give me some of that, please?
like, it's incredible, but that is what I'm trying to teach my kids is you can't control what other people think of you. He knows he's not racist. I know he's not racist. We would never stand for that in this house.
Right.
So I'm really glad that my son is getting that. And that's what I'm trying to put out in the world too is you can't create your worth by what other people by the lens of other people.
Yeah. No, you can't.
Yeah.
And we try so hard to, and that's where it becomes debilitating um, for all of us. I just think it's so incredible that you have gone through all the trauma and the pain that you've gone through and made it to a point where like you're learning to trust your intuition, because what's interesting is when you bring up your sibling goes through the same thing and still struggles so much with trusting her gut. um and that's not wrong. That's not wrong. People heal in different ways, right? But you learning, and it's almost like teaching yourself how to trust yourself and then utilizing something as as out there as it sounds, the trapeze, like, because it's so out of the box and you do have to trust people. So like you said, if one mistake and somebody's breaking a shoulder, someone's breaking a leg, like there is a level of trust there that helps you grow even your own ability to trust people in the real world. And that's what like my daughter plays volleyball and I use athletics all the time. I was a tennis player, so I played doubles and singles, but it wasn't the same amount of when you're on a team and it's like that trust, like you have to know that so and so is going to move in, and I'm sure your son understands it too, like they're going to come in and then you do that and your body knows what to do, just get out of your head and just do the moves. I think that it's such a lesson when we use things like athletics and the gym and fitness and physical stuff to learn from our body instead of our thoughts. Does
Oh
that
my
make
God,
sense?
Brooke. Yes, yes. And that is so true. And this is why I'm saying I'm not go I would I won't say that I won't go back to therapy, but the thing that has helped me the most, aside from that year I spent with Leanne and really dug into the abuse, the thing that has helped me the most is using my body as a tool to guide my mind, putting my body's perceptions of things before my mind's perception. And that's been key for me. And I hope that other people open themselves up to therapy with a professional or looking at something out of the box, new for them, different. And it might be in the area of the arts where you're experiencing something that you're uncomfortable with, that you don't think you're any good at, that perhaps there's judgment and opinions of others coming in that you have to think about, whether it's music or art or whatever it might be, and using things that are outside of our minds and letting our bodies instruct us and letting our bodies alert us to what our triggers are. And when those triggers come up, when our mind says something, that our body gives the information, our mind goes, why am I afraid? And then going backwards, okay, what about this trigger made me afraid? Where does this come from? And then using that as a healing tool, but leading with our bodies. I totally agree. And I think athletics is a wonderful, wonderful way to do that. Plus, there's, of course, the endorphins and all the other,
Oh yeah, yeah.
physiological benefits as well, right?
Yeah. No, it's beautiful. So, well, thank you for sharing all of this stuff. Just one quick thing I want to touch on before we wrap the interview up is, how has the trapeze, like, and your healing helped you set boundaries? I do a lot of boundary setting 101. Like my Instagram is like once a week I post a boundary setting, like tip kind of the week. So
Oh,
I'm always
I'm going to
interested
follow
in
you. Okay.
how does how is all of this defined your boundaries? Because that's another factor most people don't think to incorporate into their own
Mm,
healing.
that's an interesting question. So boundaries in the trapeze. Well, first of all, they're my own boundaries, learning um, what I'm comfortable doing and not doing. So if there's a suggestion of a trick or this or that, letting myself define that, setting like this is not your training, this is not your experience, this is mine. So that's one way. Like we have one
Yeah.
particular coach who he constantly still says to me, oh, you need to work on this or you need to fix this. I'm like, you know what? I've been doing this trick for 5 years. I'm comfortable with the way I'm doing it. I'm not trying to be in Cirque du Soleil. It's fine how it is. And he keeps telling me other things. I keep saying, this is not your experience. This is mine. I'm okay with that trick how it is. So it's like setting that limit of you're not going to tell me what my experience is going to be.
Yeah.
Boundaries sometimes of who I fly with. So knowing who I feel safe with, and only when I'm in my vulnerable moments, only being with those people in trainings. So it's like limiting my exposure to people who aren't so good for me energetically. There's a couple people that I don't mix well with energetically. And when I'm in a bad space, it's not good for me. And when I'm in a good space, it's fine. So knowing that about myself. Um, and I guess being able to accept that I am almost 51.
No
And
way.
yeah,
Don't look it.
and there's also physically only so much I can do. So respecting the boundaries of my physical limits and not judging myself for that. Instead, having fun with it. So, for example, the girls I fly with, we call ourselves the old bitches or the geriatric circus because we're all older. And we crack up when the 20-year-olds come in, and after a year, they're doing more than we've been doing in 6, because they're 20. So I think, just being okay with what my limits are and not making that a negative thing, but like, yeah, okay, well, this is where I'm at. So that's fine. You know, I
I
don't know if
love
that's
it.
what you meant by boundaries, but
Yeah,
that's
no,
kind of,
no, that's perfect. And I love
yeah,
it because this is where I'm at. And we're the old bitches and the geriatric flyers. Like that is literally the premise of this entire podcast is accepting yourself where you're at. And, you know, that's a hard one with age is a hard pill to swallow sometimes to accept your limits. I just turned 40 and I'm noticing my lower back. Like and it's funny because I keep it's like that definition of insanity. I keep doing the same thing and expecting my body to react differently to the workout that I'm doing.
yeah,
And every single time, my right hip, like I can feel it. It's like this click. And then it's like I can barely walk for 2 days. And it's like, why do I keep doing it? Like find a new way to do a lower impact kickboxing. Don't try and, like we don't need to kick to the ceiling. I'm not trying to go for, a competition, how
exactly.
high I can kick. Um, but it's funny when you think about, how we always try to push and try and go back to the younger version or compete with younger versions instead of accepting where we are in the skill sets that we have and that we working with our body and listening to it is a never ending lesson for me as I'm aging. I mean, I know I'm only 40, but like as I am getting into my middle years, like that's the biggest lesson I think that I have to work on is listening to my body when something says it's sore. I
Yeah,
can't, when I was 20, I'd just push through it and be fine. I can't do that today because I'm like laid out with
yeah.
ice packs all over me.
Exactly.
So,
In my book, it's divided, so it's about aging, right? But one of
mhm,
so it's like the aging mind, the aging pocketbook, the aging heart and soul, the aging body. So in my chapter, the aging body, I actually talk about the trapeze and how, bringing humor and fun into the fact that our body changes. So when I first started, I would just start with a swing. And a swing takes as your whole body. It's a very powerful move that is the base of every trick. You have to have the swing, okay?
right.
And I would just jump off the board, do the swing my first time. Well, then as years went on, then I had to do what we called a granny swing, which I just jump off, hold the bar, and just literally hang and go back and forth like this, kind of stretching out. Well, now I'm up to 2, sometimes 3 granny swings before I can even take a swing. And we joke that we're going to install one of those like electronic things that you put on the stairs, like a seat that goes up the stairs. We should just put on the ladder so that helps us get to the top, because sometimes climbing to the top is the hardest part. So, we've renamed tricks that we are cracking up that we cannot fix, and we rename the tricks to match where. And so it's kind of like, instead of like, oh, I'm not good enough, it's like, no, this is where I'm at. Look, we're all 50 years old. We need granny swings. It's just the way it is. Let's just have fun. We're the old bitches doing granny swings. Like, okay, whatever,
have some fun with it and
Yeah.
enjoy it.
Yeah. So
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for your whole story and being able and open enough to share it with an audience and with people, because I believe that with vulnerability and sharing your story, you help other women be able to get brave enough to share their story, and it heals one woman after the other after the other. So I really appreciate you taking the time to come on. Where can people find you if they want to look for you, or online? I know you've got your book, The Aging Well. And I'm sure that's
Plan for Aging Well is what it's called, and you can get it on Amazon. You can find me on my website, which is stephanieerickson.ca. Stephanie's a PH, Erickson has a CK. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook. Instagram is a lot of my personal life, and then my Facebook page is pretty much related to seniors and caregiving, although I do talk about mental health on there as well. And then, of course, on LinkedIn, I have my professional page. Yeah.
All right, great. Well,
and my YouTube channel, I have tons of videos. Oh my God, I have tons of stuff that actually I've just filmed on my own and edited on my own. And that there's a lot on seniors and caregiving, but then I have other things like boundaries. I have a little 3-minute video I did on boundaries, or the power of forgiveness, and these other kinds of things too, if anyone wants to see any of the videos on YouTube.
Stephanie Erickson is the YouTube.
I think so. If you go to my website, all the links are
It'll
there.
link it.
Yeah, there is a Stephanie Erickson who's a volleyball player, one who used to be like a beauty queen. She was in pageants. So you might find them first in your searches. Those aren't me.
You'll find her, the PH and the C and the CK in the name, and go seek her out and get her book if you're looking into aging tips and aging well, and definitely use her story to step out of your comfort zone today and push through fear to find your inner self. So thank you so much for coming today. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Desperately Seeking Self podcast. Did you love this episode? Then head on over to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. It's very much appreciated. Also check out innovativecoachbrooke.com to join in on the conversation, access show notes, and discover all the awesome free content. And don't forget to join us next week for another episode. Thanks for tuning in.